You think you are lost. You think everyone has gone. You think the silence that follows you is proof that you have been forgotten. But what if this silence isn't the absence of love? What if it's the language of it? What if this loneliness you call punishment is actually the voice of God, asking to be heard again? There are moments when life takes everything away from you. People, plans, distractions, even the reasons you once woke up in the morning. It leaves you bare, empty, stripped of sound, stripped of comfort, stripped of meaning. And in that emptiness, you hear it. The quiet hum that sits behind everything. The sound that isn't really a sound, but a presence. That is where the real conversation begins. Not when you speak, but when you finally run out of words. Most people never make it this far. They run back to noise. They drown the silence in music, in voices, in the comfort of something to do. But you stayed. You didn't run. You sat with it. You faced the silence head on, trembling but curious, terrified but awake. And that's when something ancient stirred inside you. A knowing, a warmth that didn't belong to the world outside. It was not comfort, not yet, but it was alive. It was aware of you. There is a secret the mystics have whispered through centuries. You are never truly alone. You are simply being prepared to meet what lives beyond noise. Loneliness, they said, is the sacred doorway, the moment when all other doors have closed and only one remains, the one that leads inward, the one that leads home. At first, you will resist it. You will call it cruelty. You will mistake the silence for absence. But the longer you stay, the more you realize this silence is not empty. It watches you. It breathes with you. It feels like something vast has entered the room, something too infinite to name. You start to notice how the air changes, how your thoughts slow, how the weight on your chest shifts from pain to awareness. And that's when you understand. This isn't loneliness anymore. It's recognition. Rumi once said, "Don't look for the light. Become the place where light enters." Maybe that's what this is. Maybe loneliness isn't here to break you. Maybe it's carving space inside you for light to move in. You have spent so long trying to escape the silence. But the silence was never your enemy. It was your beginning. It was the sound of God clearing everything that is not you, so you could finally hear what has always been calling your name. So breathe. Don't fight it. Don't fill it. Let the quiet have you. The world has had your attention for too long. It's time to listen to something older than the world. You are not forgotten. You are not unloved. You are simply being spoken to, in the language only silence understands. What if loneliness is not something to escape, but something to answer? What if it's not the proof that you've been abandoned, but the sign that you are finally being invited? Not by people, not by the world, but by the infinite itself. There comes a moment in life when everything external begins to lose its meaning. The laughter fades too quickly. The touch of others no longer reaches the place that aches. Even success, attention, love, they start to feel like faint echoes, not songs. And you wonder what's wrong with you, why nothing feels full anymore. But maybe nothing is wrong. Maybe the soul has simply outgrown the noise. Maybe you are being called into a deeper room, one that only opens in silence. Loneliness feels cold at first because it tears away everything familiar. It takes your patterns, your certainties, your belonging, and replaces them with air, heavy, endless, and empty. You think you've fallen into a void. You think you're disappearing, but that's only because you've entered a space where your identity begins to melt. Everything false is leaving. The masks, the stories, the names you gave yourself to survive. The silence begins to strip them off one by one until what's left isn't who you thought you were, but who you've always been. And that's the paradox. Loneliness hurts not because it's empty, but because it's holy. It's the moment when the divine hand reaches inside you and starts rearranging the furniture of your soul. Every ache is an opening. Every tear is a doorway. The pain doesn't mean something's gone wrong. It means something real is trying to be born. You are not meant to stay on the surface forever. You are meant to descend into your own depths, into the silence beneath the noise. The mystics called it the inner sanctuary, the sacred place where God waits behind the last illusion. He waits until everything you thought would save you falls away. He waits until you have no one left to talk to but Him. And when that happens, when there's no one left to impress, no one left to reach, no one left to beg, something shifts. The loneliness begins to glow. You start to sense that the silence is not a wall but a face, not distance, but presence. You start to understand that this quiet that used to terrify you has a pulse. It breathes, it listens, it loves. Maybe this is what the ancient poets meant when they said that the soul is God's mirror. In the stillness of being alone, the divine sees Himself through you. You feel it in flashes. The sudden peace that comes without reason, the small warmth that sits in the middle of your chest. It doesn't speak in words. It just whispers in feeling. You are not alone. You were never alone. You are inside me, as I am inside you. The world calls it loneliness. The mystics call it intimacy. Because what if the reason you feel separate is so that God can teach you what union truly means? Stay with that thought. Let it breathe. The silence is not the end of your story. It's the moment before the conversation begins. There comes a moment when the silence you feared begins to speak. It doesn't sound like a voice. It doesn't speak in words. It breathes through the air, through the spaces between your thoughts, through the rhythm of your heartbeat. It is not a sound you hear with your ears. It's something you remember with your soul. And when it begins, everything inside you goes still. You have entered the desert, not a place on the map, but the landscape of your own being. The air here is thin. Time moves differently. Nothing external grows here, only what's eternal. The things you used to hold on to, attention, validation, company, they have no meaning under this sky. It's just you, the wind, and that quiet presence watching from somewhere just beyond the veil. At first, it feels unbearable, but the longer you stay, the more you realize that this silence isn't empty. It's full of something vast and alive. You whisper into the emptiness, "Why do I feel so far from everything I love?" And though no sound returns, you understand the answer before it's spoken. Because the distance you feel is not separation from love. It is the space where love becomes real. Everything else, every attachment, every illusion, every false promise of belonging has been burned away. What remains is pure awareness, naked and trembling, waiting for something sacred to move through it. This is what Rumi meant when he said, "Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation." In the desert, you start to realize that words have been getting in the way all along. You've been trying to speak your way to God, think your way to peace, run your way to meaning. But he doesn't live in words. He lives in the pauses between them. You begin to feel a strange warmth rising in your chest, not comfort, not yet, but something that feels alive, like being watched by a light that sees everything in you and still does not turn away. You try to define it, but it resists definition. You try to control it, but it only deepens when you surrender. That's when you understand. This is not the silence you entered. This is something else. The silence has turned into presence. The desert has turned into a conversation. The questions that used to torment you. Why me? Why this pain? Why this path? Begin to dissolve. They don't get answered. They stop needing to be, because you sense that every ache, every tear, every breath was part of something that has always been listening. The loneliness wasn't the absence of God. It was His way of clearing the noise so you could finally hear Him. And when you finally let go, when you stop trying to make sense of it all, something miraculous happens. You feel held, not by someone, by something, by everything. The sky, the wind, the air in your lungs. They all seem to say the same thing. You are not outside of love. You are made of it. That's when you realize that the desert was never silent. It was just waiting for you to listen. At some point, after the storms of thought have quieted and the ache has softened, something begins to shift inside you. It's subtle at first. A single moment when the silence doesn't feel heavy anymore. You breathe in, and the air feels different. The weight you've carried in your chest starts to lose its sharpness, and a strange, unfamiliar calm begins to spread. It feels fragile, almost shy, as if it's been waiting behind your pain for years, afraid you might never notice it. This calm doesn't come as reward or revelation. It doesn't arrive with angels or signs. It comes quietly, like dawn slipping between the cracks of night, and it brings with it a knowing, not in your mind, but in your bones, that maybe nothing was ever missing, that maybe, even in the loneliest moments of your life, something sacred was breathing with you, guiding you, shaping you through every silence. You begin to see that loneliness was never the void you imagined. It was the womb, the place where your soul was being rewritten. Everything you lost, every person who left, every prayer that went unanswered, all of it was part of the same transformation. The loneliness didn't punish you. It purified you. It made room for something bigger than your understanding, something eternal. The mystics said that the divine hides behind the veil of suffering because that's the only place we truly look for Him. When you're surrounded by noise, you don't listen. When you're surrounded by love, you don't seek. But when everything falls silent and the world goes dim, you begin to search the darkness for a spark. And that's where He waits. Not in the noise of worship, but in the stillness of surrender. Now, as you sit in that stillness, you notice a light beneath it, not bright, not blinding, but deep. It flickers in rhythm with your heartbeat, as if the two are connected. It doesn't speak, yet you understand what it means. It says, "You were never walking alone. I was in the shadow, in the wound, in the waiting. Every silence was me. Every ache was my hand on your shoulder." You remember the times you begged for a sign, the nights you thought no one was listening, the days you wished the pain would end. And suddenly, you understand. It wasn't that your prayers went unanswered. It's that they were answered in a language you couldn't hear yet. You were too busy pleading to notice the answer that had already arrived. Silence itself. The silence was never empty. It was instruction. It was love wearing the disguise of absence, teaching you how to see without sight, how to listen without sound, how to feel without needing proof. You look around the same room, at the same walls, at the same sky, but everything feels new now because you've begun to see what the silence has been trying to show you all along, that you were never alone in your loneliness. You were in the company of something divine. That's when the tears come, not from sadness, but from recognition, the kind of tears that taste like home. There comes a moment when you no longer resist being alone, not because you've given up, but because you've discovered what lives inside the aloneness. The silence that once terrified you now feels like a presence that listens. The emptiness that used to crush you now feels alive, filled with a still warmth that doesn't come from the world outside. You start to realize that you're not sitting in absence. You're sitting in a sacred room, one that only opens when everything else has fallen away. Loneliness was never a punishment. It was an initiation, a passage into the deeper chambers of the soul, the ones too holy for noise. You used to crave connection so badly that you mistook attention for love. You wanted to be seen, to be understood, to be held. But now, you understand something much greater. You are being seen in every breath. You are being held by something invisible, something eternal. Every heartbeat is a conversation. Every sigh is a prayer that doesn't need words. You begin to see that being alone is not being forgotten. It's being chosen to feel what others run from, to see what only silence can reveal. You are not abandoned. You are being invited into a meeting that cannot happen in crowds, because the voice of God does not compete. It whispers, and it waits for the room to clear before it begins to speak. At first, that truth is difficult to accept. The human heart still wants something tangible, a voice to answer, a hand to reach back, a sign in the sky. But over time, you start to notice that the signs were always there, not as miracles, but as moments. The way the morning light touches the floor, the sound of your breath when everything else is still, the way your chest expands when you stop trying to control it all. It's all him. It's all conversation. You were just too busy listening for thunder to notice the whisper. This is the secret the mystics carried in their hearts, that the highest form of prayer is not asking, it's listening. And that listening happens only when you are alone, when the noise has died, when your mind stops trying to perform holiness and starts surrendering to it. You were never meant to live disconnected from others, but you were meant to learn that no one else completes you. No love, no success, no human presence can fill the space meant for God. And once you finally let that truth in, loneliness transforms into companionship. Not the kind that needs to be seen, but the kind that can never be lost. Rumi once wrote, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." Now you understand. What you lost wasn't taken from you. It was being transformed into presence. The love you wanted from others, the peace you begged for, the safety you searched for, it was never gone. It was waiting inside the silence, waiting for you to grow still enough to find it. And now that you have, the world doesn't feel so empty anymore. The same room, the same air, the same solitude. But now, it glows, it breathes, it feels inhabited by something infinite. You are no longer alone with yourself. You are alone with God. There comes a moment when words are no longer needed. The silence that once frightened you now becomes the language of your soul. You realize that prayer is not always spoken, and connection is not always seen. There are prayers made of breath, prayers made of surrender, prayers made of simply existing. And in this stillness, every movement, every heartbeat, every sigh becomes holy. You used to think prayer was something you gave to God. You now understand that prayer is something He gives to you, a way to remember Him when words fall apart. It isn't about asking anymore. It's about aligning, about letting your being become a vessel through which the divine moves. You are no longer performing devotion. You are dissolving into it. In the quiet, there's a rhythm. You feel it in your chest, slow and steady, like the ocean breathing through you. You start to notice that you don't have to try to pray. The silence itself prays through you. Every inhale feels like receiving. Every exhale feels like surrender. This is the point where loneliness turns sacred, where absence becomes presence, where being alone becomes being with everything. There's a softness to this kind of stillness, not empty, but alive. You feel the air touch your skin differently. The light that enters your room has a weight to it. Even the sound of your own breath carries meaning. You start to understand that God isn't above or beyond you. He's inside the quiet pulse of your existence, hiding in plain sight. When you close your eyes now, you don't fall into darkness. You fall into awareness. You begin to sense a subtle communion, the line between you and the divine fading until there's no separation left. You are not talking to God anymore. You are resting inside Him. And that, you realize, is the purest kind of prayer. The mystics were right. Stillness is not the opposite of action. It's the source of it. Everything real grows from silence first. Trees, stars, thought, love, all of them begin in stillness. And you are no different. The world keeps telling you to move, to do, to prove, to speak. But here, in this space, you learn the truth that changes everything. You don't need to perform to be worthy of love. You just need to be. Sometimes you still feel the ache. You still remember the loneliness. But now, you no longer try to fill it. You sit with it like an old friend. You understand it as part of the conversation, the echo of a love too vast to fit inside words. And in that acceptance, the ache softens into peace. You don't need to chase miracles anymore. You have become one. There comes a point when you stop searching for God and begin to see through His eyes. It's not a revelation. It's a quiet unfolding, like mist lifting from a lake at dawn. You realize that what you've been calling you is only a window, and through that window, something ancient has always been watching. The silence that once surrounded you has now moved inside you. It no longer feels like a room you enter. It feels like the air you breathe. You begin to sense that God is not a presence you meet in special moments. He's the one seeing through your eyes, hearing through your ears, moving through your hands. You've become both the observer and the observed, the prayer and the answer, the wound and the healing. When you look at the world now, everything feels different. The same street, the same people, the same sunlight. But they seem alive in a way they weren't before. You notice details that used to blur into the background. The sound of footsteps echoing in rhythm, the light trembling on glass, the way shadows fold into each other at dusk. Nothing is meaningless anymore. Every motion, every sound, every silence is part of the same divine breath. This is the secret the mystics tried to explain, but could never quite capture. That enlightenment is not a place you reach, but a way of seeing. You don't rise above the world. You return to it, emptied of illusions, full of light. The divine doesn't take you away from life. it begins to live through you. You become the instrument, and God becomes the song. Sometimes it feels like being both infinite and fragile at once. You feel the pulse of eternity inside your temporary body. You know you will fade, and yet, something in you knows it can never die. You sense how even your smallest moments ripple across existence, how a kind word, a quiet act, a glance filled with compassion becomes part of something vast and unseen. Rumi said, "I looked for God and found only myself. I looked for myself and found only God." Now you understand what he meant. The boundaries between you and the divine have dissolved. You no longer stand outside the mystery. You breathe it. You walk through the world, carrying both heaven and earth inside you. And this is where loneliness finally ends. Because you realize it never truly existed. It was the shadow cast by the illusion of separation. Once the light comes through, the shadow disappears, not because it was defeated, but because it was never real. You don't need to hold on to this understanding. You don't need to name it. Just live from it. Let it move through your words, your silence, your kindness. Let it see through you. Because when you become the mirror, God is no longer somewhere out there. He is here. In the way you look at the world, in the way you love, in the way you stay still enough to listen. You no longer pray for light. You have become the opening it shines through. Eventually, you must return. The silence does not hold you captive. It prepares you. There comes a morning when the light feels different, and you realize it's time to re-enter the world, not as who you were, but as what you've become. The same streets await you, the same voices, the same restless noise. But now, they no longer pull you apart. The stillness you found within moves with you, like a secret pulse under the skin of everything. You walk through crowds, and you don't feel lost anymore. The chaos doesn't invade you because your center no longer depends on peace from outside. You begin to notice that what once annoyed you now awakens compassion. The people rushing past, the noise, the confusion, you see them not as distractions, but as the many faces of the same longing. Everyone is searching for what you have found in silence, even if they don't know it yet. You smile at strangers and see fragments of divinity behind their eyes. The woman crossing the street, the child crying in a store, the man staring blankly out of a window. You recognize something sacred in each of them, because you know now that God hides in ordinary things. The divine doesn't need temples or rituals to appear. It breathes in traffic lights, in laughter, in exhaustion, in the brief touch between two people who don't even know each other's names. This is the return, not escaping the world, but walking through it without losing yourself, carrying the stillness of the desert into the heart of the city, knowing that the silence you once met in solitude is still here, waiting in every breath, in every moment, in every soul. You begin to live differently, not faster, not slower, just clearer. You start to listen when others speak, not to answer, but to truly hear. You move with gentleness, because now you understand that everything you touch is alive with the same light that fills you. When you eat, you taste gratitude. When you walk, you feel the earth listening. When you rest, you don't collapse into exhaustion. You sink into presence. The loneliness you once feared has turned into awareness. The silence you resisted has become your foundation. You realize that the whole world is still making the same noise it always did, but somewhere deep inside, you carry the soundless music that never ends. Rumi said, "When you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving in you, a joy. You now live in that current. You act not to impress, but to express. You give not to be seen, but because giving has become your nature. Life no longer feels like something happening to you. It feels like something flowing through you. You have not escaped the world. You have transformed it, simply by seeing it with new eyes. The silence did not take you away. It sent you back, luminous, awake, and alive. It's strange how, after all the searching, the divine finally reveals itself in the simplest things, not in miracles or visions, not in thunder or prophecy, but in the quiet pulse of everyday life. The sacred hides in plain sight. You feel it when you open your eyes in the morning and realize that breathing itself is grace. You sense it when the sunlight touches your face, and you remember that warmth was always there, even when you couldn't feel it. The world hasn't changed. You have. The same mornings, the same streets, the same faces pass by. But everything carries a quiet shimmer now, as if you're seeing through two layers at once, the surface and the light beneath it. You pick up a cup of water, and suddenly, it feels like communion. You hear laughter down the street, and it feels like prayer. Even pain, small, ordinary pain, has softened into meaning. It no longer feels like something wrong with the world, but something alive inside it. This is the mystery the mystics tried to share, that God is not hiding in the clouds. He is in the dust on your hands. He is in the pulse under your skin. He is in the silence between two words, in the pause before you answer, in the breath that fills the gap between heartbeats. Every moment, every detail, every small act of noticing, it's all part of the same sacred rhythm. You start to live slower, not out of effort, but out of reverence. You begin to taste life instead of swallowing it whole. You feel how each step, each sound, each thought ripples through the same ocean of being, and for the first time, the word ordinary no longer feels small. It feels holy. Loneliness is gone now. Not because you found someone, but because you finally found something. The invisible thread that connects all things. You see how even separation is an illusion, how even loss is part of the same divine pattern. You begin to understand that God never needed to appear as a voice or a vision. He wanted to appear as everything. Rumi said, "There are 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. There are 1,000 ways to go home again." You understand now that he wasn't talking about religion. He was talking about presence. Every act, no matter how small, can be an act of devotion if you're awake to it. Drinking water, lighting a candle, holding someone's hand, all of it becomes prayer when done with awareness. And maybe that's what it means to live with God, not to escape the world, but to see it rightly, to see it as it truly is. Sacred, alive, whispering. Every moment is a meeting. Every silence is a doorway. Every breath is a reminder that you are already home. The divine was never waiting for you in temples or scriptures. It was waiting for you in the sacred ordinary, in this breath, this moment, this life. At the end of the journey, you don't find heaven waiting for you in the sky. You find it here, in the pulse of the present moment, in the rhythm of your breath, in the quiet miracle of simply being. The road you walked, the wounds you carried, the silences you endured, all of it has led you back to this stillness, to this knowing, to this love that was never gone. You no longer search for signs or promises. You've learned that the divine doesn't arrive with thunder. It moves like light underwater, unseen, but everywhere. You walk now with an ease that cannot be explained. You speak more slowly, With reverence, you listen more deeply, not just to people, but to wind, to time, to the invisible hum behind all things. You no longer pray for strength. You live as it. Loneliness has turned into presence. Silence has turned into song. The same stillness that once felt empty now overflows with meaning. You can't explain it. You don't need to. You understand that truth was never meant to be spoken, only lived. Now, when you walk through the world, you move like someone who has seen the other side of silence. You carry it with you, in your eyes, in your gestures, in your patience. People feel it before you speak. The way you listen makes them quiet. The way you move makes them breathe. They don't know what it is, but they recognize something in it, a reflection of what they've been searching for all along. You have become what you were looking for: the listener, the silence, the light. You are no longer separate from the divine. You are its expression. You don't chase peace anymore. You are peace, walking. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But he could have said just as easily, "The healed heart is where the light begins to shine outward." You have become that heart now. The pain that once defined you has become the doorway through which the infinite now flows into the world. And this is the secret few ever learn. Enlightenment is not escape. It's embodiment. It's learning to walk through the noise of the world without letting it drown the song inside you. It's finding beauty in the ordinary, grace in the broken, and eternity in the moment. So walk gently, speak softly, love fully, carry your silence like a lantern. Let it guide you through the dark places of others. You are not here to teach them. You are here to remind them that even in their loneliness, even in their pain, even in their silence, they are never truly alone, because now you know. You were never separate from God. You were always inside His breath, the one who walks with light,